Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Okay, good evening and happy Uposatha. So, uh, this is an opportunity to reflect on the Dhamma, and as always, I offer ideas, suggestions, reflections, and anything that's useful you can take, give it a try, integrate it into your practice. Anything that's not useful, you can set aside. You don't have to do everything I say. You don't have to believe everything I say. In fact, categorically, don't believe everything I say. Instead, put things to the test and see if they work out for you. And if so, then you can have faith in them. And this is what faith is. Now, tonight I'd like to talk about some preparatory steps in meditation. The important first step of meditation, where we subdue the five hindrances. And I got the idea to address this part of meditation specifically because I've been having conversations with people, and I noticed it's very easy for meditators, especially meditators when they get into a retreat center mentality or environment, when they're going to be doing a lot of progressive meditation over a period of time. It's very easy to get a bit tense about our meditation practice and to kind of get fixated on the results that we're trying to get from a meditation practice because we're going into each sit with an expectation that it'll be cumulative. We'll get better and better at something and we'll start getting really good results, whatever results we're looking for. Um, this tension is actually one of the major obstacles or hindrances to getting to our objectives, whatever our objectives are in meditation, whether it's to develop wisdom or to reach new levels of samadhi, of composure. We're not going to get there if there's any tension in the mind. Sometimes our goals are the very thing that's keeping us from getting to our goals and how we relate to them. And I've talked with a number of people who, um, because they keep sitting and they keep reaffirming what they're trying to get out of the practice, they're starting to skip a step when they sit in meditation. They do the preparatory steps, and we do this every Wednesday when I give a guided meditation. The preparatory steps, you sit down, you kind of verify that you're not going to be interrupted. You check all of the environmental conditions. And then you make a determination, I'm going to sit for such and such time or to such and such condition occurs. And you very actively set down bodily intention. You're not going to react. You're composing your mind along the intention of I'm going to meditate. And most people get this. Whenever they sit, they have some sort of pre-flight checklist where they set everything, they get everything right so that they don't have to keep shifting, keep changing, keep adapting to the situation. They set things up beforehand. But then what do we do next? What is the state of our mind? And I'll often move the guided meditations into posing some questions, like how energetically, where are you? Are you tired? Are you restless? What have you been thinking about? If you've been, repeatedly thinking about something, planning something, expecting something, this could lead to some sense desire in the mind. You've got ideas are going to press at your mind. Or if you've had difficulties during the course of the day, then there might be grievances still floating in the mind, arguments, either that you're repeating, arguments that you had with somebody, or arguments that you never actually had, but are going on in your head still. Things, oh, I should have said this. I should have said this. And this important step of the meditation is where we're supposed to subdue the five hindrances. The hindrances, nivarana, the word literally means obstacle. So when we sit down to meditate, we can the preparatory steps get our minds oriented towards the goal. We're setting down worldly interactions and we're focusing on mental cultivation. Yeah. But now, even though we've set up the mind with this intention, there's still some things that are in our way. And the Buddha actually talks about this phase of meditation. There's two pretty prominent ways that he talks about it. And one is he says they abandon covetousness and grief in relation to the world. And the other way he says they abandon the five hindrances. These are corruptions that obsess and taint the mind. And it's actually these two ways of framing it are talking about the same thing. Yeah. So the phrase covetousness and grief, and now this is a Bhikkhu Bodhi phrase. So I grew up in the Bhikkhu Bodhi translation era where it was just that was the given way of translating this. And now, you know, 20 years later, we have a bunch of different translations floating around. And for those who are interested in the Pali, the phrase covetousness and grief is actually a bija domanassa. And covetousness and grief are not an exact direct translation. But it's a good way of framing it to link it to the five hindrances, right? Covetousness very obviously sounds like sense desire. Grief sounds like ill will. So it's an easy way, a shorthand way of saying you're dealing with the five hindrances at this stage. But the word abhijja, the ja, comes from jayati. And jayati, if you're into Pali, you recognize is actually the what leads to jhana. It's the same word in a different form. And jayati means actually to burn. It means conflagrate. It means fire, excitation. And the way that this is linked to sense desire is not directly sense desire, but is all the states of excitation and outward flowing of the mind. So sense desire, yes, is a very outward flowing mental activity, but so is restlessness. So is ill will and doubt in some ways. Yeah, anything that is causing the mind to repeatedly jump to a particular topic. This is a bija, and this is definitely going to obstruct us from uh, cultivating any sort of mental samadhi, any sort of composure, because the mind is doing this reflexively, impulsively. It is an involuntary thing. It's a bad habit. And so all the five hindrances have this kind of nature of a bija wrapped up in them. And this is specifically what I'd often see with some meditators is they would sit down and they would have their goal so strongly in mind that there was this abhija towards the goal. There was this outward flowing towards the goals, like I want to get what I'm trying to get from meditation. And in talking to him and getting them to see that that tension is going to actually obstruct them from getting to the goal, you see they kind of breathe out and they kind of realize that they have to let go of the tension. They have to let go of that strong, tense fixation on the goal in order to get anything. And now some people, this is actually it's very hard to do because they're quite afraid to let go of that strong grasp of the goal. Because what are we when we don't have this excitation towards a goal? Where we don't feel like we have to get this, like we've got to motivate ourselves. We've got to bring the energy up. We're so used to having our energy raised up because of obsession and fascination, that when that subsides, the resulting state of sort of settledness can be quite alarming to some people. They don't tolerate it. They think it's undirected. It's not capable of getting them to their goal. But this is kind of missing what this stage of meditation is really trying to do. We don't want the mind to feel compelled, to feel rushed, to feel agitated towards any particular goal. Anytime when we see that that is the case, that is what we have to work on first. That is what we have to let go of first. Because that agitation, that sense of I have to, is always going to come from the hindrances. It's always going to be an unwholesome state of mind. Yeah, it's not going to produce wholesome mind states. And the best that we can hope is that through cultivating mindfulness, it will kind of exhaust itself. But if we address it directly and we see that, no, I've got to let go of the tension, I've got to let go of the fixation, this abhijja, this burning has to be abandoned before I can start applying the mind to the goal. And the second part is domanassa. And this is a particular word is, and in covetousness and grief, it's often applied to like ill will or sloth and torpor or doubt, a sense of, oh, as I can't meditate because of XYZ. I don't feel like it. My energy is too low. I'm so angry. I'm so upset. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm getting out of this. All of these things can be likened to grievances that we might have floating in the mind. But domanassa is actually a pretty important word to understand in this context. So often we talk about the Buddhist path in a generalized way, and we say that this is the path for the ending of dukkha, right? And I'm guilty too. We all do this. But that can generate some confusion in people because dukkha is not going to completely subside until parinibbana, right? The what we can deal with in our present life is a component of dukkha called domanassa. And domanassa is, well, dukkha is pain in a general way that covers all pain, physical and mental. Domanassa is specifically mental pain. And the way that we often explain domanassa is the simile of the second arrow. And we all know the simile, but the idea is that you're walking along, you're doing your business, you're for some reason you're in ancient India, and you suddenly get hit by the arrow shot by an assassin. Now you didn't know somebody had put out a hit on you. You didn't know somebody was in waiting. You didn't know that they were a good shot. And so you couldn't avoid the arrow. There's nothing you could do. And this is likened to physical pain. There's not much you can do. You don't know when you're going to have an accident. You don't know when you're going to get sick. These things just happen in the course of human life. But in the simile of the two arrows, there are some people who react, oh, I've been shot with an arrow. I've got to get out of the way. And they immediately start to take steps to not get hit by any further arrows. And then there are some people who are like, ah, I've been hit by an arrow. And they like in the movies, they kind of slump over in the street and like, oh, I've been shot by an arrow. Oh, woe is me, woe is me. And what will happen to that person? Little known fact, arrows don't often immediately kill people, right? Because they, unlike bullets, they have a shaft, so they kind of plug the wound as they go in. You don't immediately bleed out unless it's a very accurate shot. So while you're sitting there thrashing around, oh, woe is me, the assassin is going to continue shooting you full of arrows there in the middle of the street. And then your chances of survival are very low, right? And the second arrow simile is used to talk about mental pain. And this is the part of dukkha that we can address, that we can deal with, and we can see cease in our present life and in our daily meditations, right? This is something that we can actively curtail. Whereas physical pain might kind of, well, it will kind of be around for the remainder of our life. Mental pain can subside, it can cease. And when we reach the various stages of enlightenment, it ceases permanently. Certain kinds of mental pain will never occur again in the future. And that's a powerful thing. But at this stage of meditation, the Buddha is specifically talking about dealing with any mental pain that we are causing ourselves in the present moment. So again, this is directly, it's the same step as abandoning the five hindrances. It's just a different way of framing it. So we have abhijja, which is all of the excitation and the must, I have to, I got to, this is so important, that all of the things that create the tension in the mind. But the other side of that is all of the things that cause pain or stagnation or uh, a lack of motivation or difficulty in the mind. Yeah. This is whereas abhijja is kind of like we're trying to crawl over the obstacles in our minds. Domanassa is kind of like hitting the obstacles, and it's the painful part of the five hindrances. Yeah. And these two qualities exist in the mind when we first sit for meditation. Unless we've already been doing meditations and contemplations in the prior in the day and prior in the previous days, so that the mind is protected. And this is one of the main functions of the jhanas, is to get the mind gradually viveka, secluded, free, liberated from the five hindrances, and create a buffer in the mind so that the hindrances can't arise. But if our we've been going about our daily activities, then the mind still has some of this abhijja and domanassa in it. And the way that we often see it manifested, the other way that this is talked about is the five hindrances. Yeah, so we have sense desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry, restlessness and regret, and doubt. And each of these hindrances have both of these qualities to them. They have the abhijja, or the excitation, the obsessing of the mind, but they also have the domanassa. They have a mental pain component that causes it makes it obstructs us from being able to create wholesome mental states. Yeah, so as I say, I'd often talk to somebody and would see that they're kind of fixated on a goal in their meditation. And once they let go of the goal, there would still be domanassa, there would still be mental pain. They would let go of the tension. They'd be like, okay, you're right. I'm holding this too tightly. But then they'd kind of slump and they'd be like, well, but what do I do? As soon as they let go of the obsession with the goal, they become listless. They're like, this is not going to work. I don't feel motivated. I don't feel driven to meditate now. Before, I was obsessed. I wanted to get the jhanas. I wanted to get sparkly lights and piti and sukha, and I wanted to get full enlightenment so that everybody would bow down and respect me. But now you're telling me to let go of that, to let go of all of that tension, to relax, which is a kindness. Yeah, somebody's too tight, they're tense. You get them to relax. Okay, this is better. Most people, they'll acknowledge that this is better, but how do you then move forward with meditation? Yeah. So many people, when they let go of the outward flowing of the minds, they fall into sloth and torpor. But this is a sort of mental pain, and it's a predictable mental habit that says, "Oh, I can't do it. I don't have motivation. This is not the day to do it." Now that is is not dependent on whether or not a bija is present in the mind. It's something completely different. It is its own kind of reflex of the mind. And if our energy is low, if we haven't been developing wholesome mental activities, then letting go of the fascination, the obsession, the fixation will cause the sort of low energy states to be very prominent in the mind. So we also have to address them because just letting go of the tension doesn't mean we're going to automatically have wholesome mental states. And we need to have wholesome mental states in order for our samadhi to develop, in order for our meditation to go forward, in order for the mind to become buffered against the five hindrances. But in order to get these wholesome mental states, we do have to address all of the forms of mental pain that are still in the mind. And ill will is one of the most prominent, is one of the most obvious, yeah, because being angry hurts. It hurts in a way that is its own kind of obsession to the mind. We don't like how it feels, but we're often stuck in this loop of feeding it. Yeah. So this is one of the reasons why I wholly encourage, and you put down on the record that Tahn Pamutto says you should be doing metta practice a bit at least every day. This is the Tahn Pamutto method. It's like you need to be doing some amount of metta regularly, keeping this in the mind, because this is one of the greatest ways to address domanassa, mental pain. Yeah. Metta, actual loving kindness or friendliness, is the opposite of mental pain. It is a state of joy and friendliness in the mind. If you are in the habit of cultivating that on a regular basis, you will find it easy to recognize, oh, my mind is kind of eh. My mind is kind of eh. It's kind of annoyed. It's kind of whinging, as Ajahn Sumedho would say, the whinging mind. If you see that your mind is in that state, you can be like, oh, I need a bit of metta. And that's that bit of zest, is the turning of the mind that will give you a wholesome mental activity. With the turning of the mind towards that wholesome mental activity, then suddenly the domanassa is not present. Wholesome mental activities don't create mental pain. That's kind of why we call them wholesome. That's why we cultivate them. That's why they're good. They don't cause us pain. Yeah. Another one is the idea of contentment. Yeah. So as an antidote to like sense desire, when we focus on the things that we are satisfied with, we're grateful for, when we're in the habit of getting joy from renunciation, recognizing our renunciation and the ways that we have been freed from so many kinds of suffering, that is a delighting, joyful mental state, the joy of renunciation. And when we turn the mind towards contentment in that way, that state doesn't have mental pain. Yeah, so it's a wholesome mental state. Many of us, I think, rightfully, as we are trained to, as we sit down and as we do the preparatory steps, we get ready for meditation and then we settle. The instructions are often to begin to develop mindfulness, begin to follow the breath, or begin to recite a mantra, or begin to scan through the body, whatever our meditation technique is. And many teachers will then say, okay, if you find that you're having difficulty, then the five hindrances are present. And you've got to look at which of the five hindrances are present and apply the proper antidote. This is the second way of saying the same thing. So the first way is the way I've been describing, where we see abhijja and domanassa, and we say, oh, I got to get these out of the mind. These are going to make it so that mindfulness doesn't get strong. These are going to make it so that I keep losing my mental object. We can sit down and we can intentionally purify the mind of these obstructions. Yeah. And then we can apply ourselves to our meditation object. And then we can start really focusing on cultivating mindfulness and concentration. Or we can begin starting to develop mindfulness and concentration, which is a wholesome mind state, which is a wholesome application of mind. And as the difficulties come up, we begin to address them with the antidotes until we no longer have any obstructions going on between us and the meditation exercise. These are two equally valid ways of doing it. We can immediately address the five hindrances and then start doing the meditation exercise, or we can start doing the meditation exercise, accepting that it's going to be a bit clunky until we purify the mind of the five hindrances. Yeah. And this is, many meditators can kind of get stuck at this stage because they sit down and they want to immediately get into the meditation exercise, but they don't recognize you have these obstacles, you have these barriers, you have these unwholesome mental tendencies still in the mind. And they are going to make doing the meditation exercise difficult, and they will flounder, they will struggle, or they will feel that they're actually striving, they're actually trying pretty hard, but they're not getting the results that they're expecting to get from the meditation. And a lot of that is just because they have not completely subdued the five hindrances. They're maybe able to get some mindfulness, to get some composure of mind, but not enough to really completely evict the five hindrances from the mind. Yeah. So these are two valid ways of doing it. And for those who like to take the second way, who like to deal with the five hindrances as their own, each their own mental pattern with its own antidote, I've been thinking over the last week of ways that you might be able to address each of the hindrances and figure out which one is in the mind. And for me, I often do this through contemplation. So when I'm curious about what state the mind is in, I try to generate an idea, to generate a concept, to think of a particular scenario that I know will generate a particular mental state. And I can use this in a variety of different ways. For a Subha practice, for contemplating the body, you want to generate a particular mental state of seeing the body as it is. For metta, you want to generate a mental state of friendliness. Yeah. And so when you sit down, you're like, well, how do I do metta? Well, you've got to address, like, how do I generate an idea of friendliness? Yeah. Now, each of us has a different way of doing that. And each of us can develop new ways of doing that. And this is the part of contemplation where you're using mental activity to develop the state of the mind. This is bhavana. Yeah. And so with dealing with the five hindrances, there are some obvious ideas, like if you have a lot of sense desire, you can contemplate dukkha, or you can contemplate death, or you can contemplate the repulsiveness of the body. You can do these meditations that are about letting go and renouncing, and that can bring the mind to a state of letting go and renouncing. Yeah, you'll get to a state of not wanting the sensual world. If you're dealing with a lot of ill will, then you generate friendliness, and that gets you to let go of the ill will. These are ways of using tried and true meditation techniques to get that particular hindrance out of the mind. And many people are familiar with this, but this is an extension of the second way of doing things, where you start meditating with the intention that your meditation is going to be what removes the five hindrances. But do you know which hindrance? Do you know which antidote you should be applying? So for me, I don't tend to use the complete package meditations to deal with the hindrances individually. I tend to just generate contemplation, which I know will combat a particular hindrance, and I see if it works. If it works, then I pat myself on the back and I said, that's the one. That was the hindrance. You addressed it. But I tried to figure out how to explain this, and I thought of five different contemplations or scenarios you can try, you can test in your mind to see which hindrance might be present. Yeah. Now, I offer this to you. You don't have to do it. You don't have to. But if you would like, I suggest getting a pen and paper and maybe just writing these down. And that way, in the future, if you feel like it, you might give it a try, and you can see for yourself whether or not this is a valid way of approaching the five hindrances. So the first hindrance, the hindrance of kama raga or sense desire, is that which is fixated in sensual objects. It's an outward going state of mind. And we often recognize that this is present because our mind keeps circling around to the same mental idea or to the same object often. You know, it might be something we want or something we've been doing. I remember talking with somebody who was forget what they were playing a puzzle game or something, and they found that when they sat to do meditation, their mind kept thinking of the puzzle game. That's what happens. That is the clearest way you can describe sense desire. It's like you want to, okay, I'm not playing the puzzle game right now. I want to set it down. But you just see these blocks floating through your mind whenever you close your eyes. That's sense desire. So what would the antidote be? So imagine you're in the room that you are, there is a dead body. Okay. Now you can choose any dead body that you want. It could be the dead body of an animal, it could be a dead body of somebody you know, or even because here at the monastery, where it's a religious organization. So, people in the extended community, people are dying all the time. Yeah. So we're often in a state of contemplating somebody in the extended community who has died as though they're in the room. A lot of the relatives come and they're thinking about the person, they're talking about the person, they're and one thing you will notice about the mind is if you generate the idea that there is a dead body in the room, you cannot have sense desire. You can't be excited about what you're going to have for lunch. You can't be excited about going on vacation. You can't be excited about a TV show that you know is coming out or a movie that's about to release. You just can't. There is this natural state of respect or hesitancy in the mind that all creatures feel. And say this is not just a human quality. This has been observed over and over again in animals. Elephants in the desert in the savannas of Africa, when they see the corpse of one of their deceased relatives or one of the deceased members of their herd, they will mourn. They will circle back and keep going to the dead body, and all of the things that an elephant might get excited about, which I don't really know what those would be, they don't do. They have no sense desire, no excitability about the world when they're in the presence of death. And so this is something you can just generate as an idea, and you can give this a try. You imagine a dead body in the room and see if the hindrance that's been obsessing your mind, that's been causing your mind to circle back, suddenly subsides. You're like, because there's something in the mind where we're kind of like, are they here? Are they present? Do they know what I'm thinking about? Do they know I'm thinking about puzzle games while I'm sitting next to their dead body? That's really disrespectful. And you could find that if indeed it's difficult to get excited, you feel the like all of the tension starts to dissipate, like air is being let out of a tank, then that's good. You can recognize there was sense desire present. Yeah. So the second one is ill will. This is Bhyapada. And ill will is a very relational hindrance. Often we're thinking of other people when we have ill will. Sometimes there can be an internal ill will, like we're annoyed or frustrated with ourselves or our own situation or our faculties, our ability to respond to something. But often when we can, we try to find some way to blame somebody else. Yeah. But now, one way that you can test for if there is ill will in the mind is to generate the idea that at this very moment, whatever is bothering you, everybody that you know is being bothered by the exact same thing at this very moment. Yeah. So if you're frustrated and annoyed and your meditation is being obstructed because you have a pain in your knee, for instance, imagine that everybody you know right now at this very moment is experiencing pain in their knees. Yeah. Or if you're very upset because you just heard a particular piece of news, imagine that everybody you know is also right now, wherever they are, thinking about that particular piece of news and they're upset by it. Yeah. So this is a wholesome way, an empathetic way of relating to other human beings, is imagining that our grievance is not really our grievance. It is just a grievance. And it is a grievance that is a grievance for all people. And one thing we'll find when we try this out is the mind naturally disengages from the reflexive, this is my problem. This is something that I am upset about. Yeah, and this is also kind of built into the Brahma Viharas, metta, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity, this sense of empathy and recognizing there are other beings in the world and they also suffer. When we do this, and we see that whatever we're frustrated about, the tension starts to dissipate. It starts to unravel. We're like, oh, it doesn't make sense for me to be so upset and obsessed about this if everybody's going through it right now. Because when we're angry, we often feel very justified. When our friend is angry, what do? We say, "Oh, calm down, calm down. It's not worth it. It's not worth getting angry." Empathy does this. Yeah, we don't want other people to suffer. We're just often ignorant of when we're causing ourselves suffering. When we see anger in another person, we often recognize that's not good. So this is engaging that part of the mind. If you do this contemplation, you imagine other people are experiencing this suffering, and this dissipates, then it was ill will. Yeah. And you can see if this helps get enough pressure off the mind that you can then begin the meditation exercise. So the third one I thought, the third one is sloth and torpor. And this can be a tricky one for people to recognize because once it gets hold, it tends to really, really obsess the mind, really box the mind in. It's all about closing down and getting tunnel vision and reducing our opportunities, our possibilities. And it can often feel like it's impossible to get out of, like we've sunk into a swamp and there's just no way the meditation is lost. There's no way to get out of this. But imagine when you're in this situation that there is a wildfire burning a couple of miles away. Now, this is something that you've been paying attention to on the news. It's not out of control yet, but if the wind were to pick up, or if it were to catch something like a forest or a building particularly flammable, suddenly that wildfire might shift in your direction and you would have to evacuate immediately. Yeah. So I spent many years in California, and this was a constant thing. There were quite a number of days where there was smoke on the horizon, or there was a glow on the horizon in the evening from nearby forest fires. Yeah, and when there is a fire burning nearby that might at some point shift your way, it is very hard to just become stupid. Just zone out. Yeah, you tend to enter a state of not necessarily anxiety, but readiness. When a fire is burning a couple of miles away and you can even smell the smoke, you don't think about going to sleep. You think, why don't I just stay up? I'll just scroll on my phone or I'll just, hang out, read a book and wait to see what happens. Yeah. So if you're sitting in meditation and it's all quiet, just imagine a couple miles away there's a fire burning and see if this sense of the tunnel vision that has been falling upon the mind starts to dissipate. And you're like, oh, well, I can't go to sleep. I can't just zone out while there's a potential danger nearby. Yeah. And specifically, it's a couple miles away. Like if the building you were on were on fire, this would be a very good reason to experience restlessness and to immediately want to get out of the situation. But it's like it's nearby. It's just close enough that you don't want to zone out. Yeah. This is a great way to test for sloth and torpor in the mind and also see if you're capable of getting out of it. Sometimes torpor is very physical. Sometimes you are just genuinely tired. And maybe you try this, but you see that even still, you just can't. Your body is shutting down. Your brain doesn't have oxygen. You're about to collapse on the meditation cushion. In which case, the Buddha's actual advice is take a nap, set an alarm, set an intention to get up, and when you get up, rested, go back to trying to meditate. Yeah, and that's the Buddha's advice in that situation. Sometimes when it's physical and you try the mental exercise and you're like, oh no, I am exhausted. Well then, yeah, sometimes even when there's an emergency nearby, you're exhausted. And you ask somebody, hey, if something shifts, wake me up. I need to get some sleep. And you just get some rest. Hmm? That's a good way that you can test the state of the mind. The fourth hindrance is a restlessness and regret, a restlessness and worry. It's another kind of multi-faceted mind state. Yeah. And this is a state of unwholesome anxiety. Yeah, it's a feeling that we need to, we have to, we must do something that we cannot settle. And specifically, when you're in meditation and you want to settle, you want to relax, you want to chill out. And every time you do even a little bit, the mind kind of reflexively jumps. It says, no, 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 can't. This is too important, too dangerous, too exciting. I can't settle. And the mind doesn't let itself rest, let itself become relaxed. You can suspect that restlessness and worry is in the mind. Yeah. Now, the idea I thought is imagine, if you will, that at this moment, in a nearby district, there is a court, and this court is deciding a case on your future. Yeah, and so this is something that many people in the world face all the time. There's a court case is going on. It's deciding their citizenship, it's deciding their economic future, it's deciding divorce proceedings, or it's deciding your relationship future. All of these are custody of children. There are ways that you can have a court proceeding going on, and depending on the way that the court case goes, your life can take drastically different directions. Yeah. And so this contemplation is imagine right now there is something external to you being decided, and depending on which way it goes, your life will take dramatically different directions. The result of this contemplation is you don't know the future. You don't know which way your life is going to go. It is impossible to plan. It is impossible to arrange anything. It is impossible to set things in motion when you don't know which of these two dramatically different directions your life is going to take. So naturally, if you've ever been in this situation where you're waiting to get results from maybe from a doctor's test or something, but from a court proceeding, you're waiting to hear some important piece of news like that, you realize you can't do anything. You have no recourse but to sit and to wait. And for many people, it's difficult, and they pace and they check their phone, and the waiting is not something they're accustomed to. But you can't do anything else, right? You have no choice but to wait and to see how things are going to go. And if you try this particular contemplation and you see that it suddenly stops the mental process that was going on in its tracks. It's like, oh, I've been trying to plan. I've been trying to keep this particular idea going. But if I don't know what the future holds, what the immediate future holds, then it doesn't make any sense to keep this going. Yeah. The mind will suddenly unravel in its fixation on this particular thing, and you'll realize the only thing you can do in this particular moment is to kind of let that go, wait and see. Now, if you've been to any of the guided meditations, you know I talk a lot about this observational mind, this patient mind that is paying attention to its situation rather than trying to change its situation. And this is mindfulness. Yeah. It is, mindfulness is built on the mind, which is taking in and observing phenomena without trying to adjust or alter or change them in some ways. Yeah. And so if you try this contemplation, when it gets the mind to kind of relax and say, oh, I just got to wait and see. Anything I'm trying to do is not going to work. So I've just got to just hold off and wait. Then you'll know that restlessness is what's been affecting the mind. And you're like, oh, okay. This is exactly the patient mind state I want to develop. Now, just like sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry can have this secondary part of the hindrance that is almost more physical, and therefore there's not much you can do about it. Now, regret is that secondary effect of this hindrance. Yeah, so if you have done something unwholesome, something bad, something hurtful, you might notice that you're feeling a sense of regret. And this is something that it can obsess the mind, yeah. But it obsesses the mind most acutely based on proximity, yeah, how close you are to that event. So I say it's physical because often the further you get from that event, the less it hurts in theory. It's like grief when somebody passes away, immediately it's impossible to think straight. Yeah, the grief is just so close, it's so intense. But as time goes on, gradually the intensity dissipates because it is conditioned by the proximity to that event. So regret and grief are this secondary effect of restlessness and worry that you might not be able to immediately overcome. Yeah. So you try this contemplation, you think, oh, my future is being decided. I've just got to wait and see. And you recognize it's helping a bit, but that some of the pain is just is still lingering, yeah. And you recognize that it's something that's it's very close in time to right now that you can't make go away. When you do something bad, when you hurt somebody, you can't just will the mind to not pay attention to it, to just forget it. And this is part of why we develop the precepts. Don't do bad things. Don't feel regret. One-to-one relationship. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It's the best way to not experience this hindrance. Just like when you experience torpor, when your body is exhausted, you should rest. This is how you deal with this. You know, when you have done something bad, when you're caught in a state of grief, there's not much you can do. Yeah. So you've got to preemptively try to not get into that state. Because if you assess that, yeah, this is present and it's really not going away no matter what I do with my mind, then the solution is time. You need to get a bit of space. You need to go for a walk and just, do whatever you need to do to kind of gradually process it until you can start to think straight again. Okay. And the fifth hindrance is the hindrance of doubt. And the hindrance of doubt is where we don't know what's right and wrong. We don't know up and down. We don't know forward and backward. It is likened to spinning in circle or being caught in a dust cloud. Yeah. We are confused about what to do next. We're confused about the objectives of the meditation. We're confused about the nature of the Dhamma. We're confused about our teacher's instructions. There's a lot of different ways that we can get stuck in doubt. Yeah. Mm. So this one I really struggled with trying to think of a contemplation to deal with because the Buddha's encouragement when you're facing doubt is to focus on those things you're confident in. This is when you focus on things which generate a sense of faith or confidence, then you are not experiencing doubt. Yeah, so often we experience doubt because we fall into the habit of contemplating things that we can't know, that we can't be certain about, that we have not confirmed. And this causes the mind to be in a kind of cloudy, murky state about what to do next. Yeah. But if you haven't developed this reflex of redirecting the mind towards things you have faith in, the hindrance of doubt can really throw you for a loop and can make you question your entire practice. Yeah. And sometimes it seems silly because a little bit later, another day or another week or another month down the line, you're like, oh, that was stupid. Oh, I know what the practice is all about. Why did I get so confused? Why did I get so distraught? Well, all sorts of things can cause the mind to fall into this pattern. But the contemplation you might try is imagine you just got word from your doctor that your doctor's run some tests and they realize that you've been inadvertently exposed to a chemical that affects your brain's ability to focus. Yeah. And basically, they're giving you a prognosis of, yeah, you're going to be a little goofy for a while. Yeah. And you suddenly realize when you get this information that you have been acting a little goofy. You've been walking into a room and then forgetting why you went there. You've been opening the refrigerator and then just staring at it. Like, what was I looking for? You've been losing track of dates. You've been losing track of times. You've been missing appointments. And suddenly you realize this is why. You've ingested some chemical that is making it impossible to develop complex plans or to think about things far outside your immediate scope of influence, which what's within arm's reach. Now, if you got the news, okay, you're going to have trouble focusing. And this is, don't worry, it'll go away in a couple of days or in a week. Take this and you'll feel better soon. But if you realize that you can't trust yourself to make elaborate plans or to think about things outside of your immediate scope of influence, you would necessarily have to focus on what's right in front of you. Yeah. You would necessarily realize that the most important thing for you to do right now is decide what you want and to immediately focus on the next step in that process. Yeah. If it's a 10-step process, you're just going to focus on step one until that's done. And then just focus on step two until that's done. And then just focus on step three until that's done. So the idea is imagine that you recognize you're impeded in your ability to focus. And so you've got to abandon any kind of speculation, any kind of wondering about the future, any kind of planning, anything where you might be thinking about something that's not immediately in this room. If you do, you will get confused, you will get lost, and you will find yourself standing on a street corner somewhere, not knowing why you got there. There's an inherent risk of getting lost and confused right now. Yeah. And the funny thing about this contemplation, besides the fact that it can work, and you realize, oh, I've just got to do the next step. And suddenly things start to materialize, and you realize oh, I was always supposed to be doing this. The funny thing about this contemplation is every single person is being afflicted by this chemical. This chemical is called oxygen. Yeah. Every living human being has trouble focusing. Yeah. Whenever we think about too many things outside of our scope of influence, we get confused, distracted, and dispersed. We lose sight of what we're trying to accomplish. It is a natural byproduct of trying to do too many things and trying to focus on too many things. The antidote is to figure out what's in front of us, what we are actually doing, and to focus on things one step at a time. Yeah. So you can try this idea that you just gotten word from your doctor. You're going to have trouble focusing for a bit. and see if that helps you kind of narrow it down. You're like, oh, well, that is the problem. I'm just not focused. I don't have a clear idea of the next step. And it could get you very necessarily to start to say, well, okay, what is the next step? And if you're trying to do a meditation, a particular kind of meditation, then thinking what the next step is will almost guarantee you to begin doing the meditation. Yeah. If you, because that's often what is missing is just not knowing the next step and focusing on it. Yeah. If you can do this, this is the validation for the second way of approaching the hindrances. Yeah. If you can subdue doubt and you can address all of the hindrances, and then you can immediately say, what is the next step? And you think of the first step in mindfulness meditation, the first step in metta meditation, the first step in body contemplation, whatever technique you're doing, and you immediately focus on doing that, then one, doubt is not present. And two, you are probably actually ready to begin doing that step. Yeah. The hindrances have probably subsided enough that you're ready to commit to it. And in committing to it, you'll be generating wholesome mental states. And because you're generating wholesome mental states, the hindrances will not only subside, but the basis of them will cease. And as the basis of them ceases, then samadhi begins to arise in the mind, and the mind becomes protected for a time from those hindrances even being present. Yeah, the mind becomes viveka, secluded from the hindrances. And this is very important for us to do good contemplation. Okay, so this is yeah, a bit of talk, a bit of explanation of this stage of meditation. I hope this can be useful for you. Maybe these ways of addressing the hindrances might work for you, or maybe just the idea of abhijja domanassa, of covetousness and grief, of looking at am I trying to go out or am I kind of afflicted? And is there a way to kind of like purge these from the mind so that I can begin to do the meditation exercise in earnest? Yeah, and whichever route that you take, I encourage you to give some time, to give some practice to really getting good at this. Because if you do, you will find meditation will stop being so difficult, so painful, so up and down in your meditation practice. I don't know what this is going to bring. And more often it will be like, oh, you're dealing with the obstructions, and then you're beginning the mindfulness meditation in earnest. Yeah. And every sit will start to be like that. You'll have some period of dealing with the obstructions, but then the rest will be, okay, now I can just do what I came here to do. Now I can just do the meditation. You'll be relaxed, you'll be focused, and you'll be generating wholesome mind states. Yeah, which is one of the most important things, one of the most valuable goals or products of this practice is in a world where we tend to dwell with a mix of wholesome and unwholesome mind states and kind of just move between them based on the external conditions. You can actively let go of the unwholesome ones and cultivate the wholesome ones in a straightforward way. That is amazing. Yeah, bhavana. All right. So I offer this reflection for your contemplation on the Uposatha. Good luck in your meditations.